So welcome to the Oncrawl's panel talk on content alchemy of turning words into conversations. So welcome. I'm sure some of you are probably expecting Adriana Stein today. Unfortunately, she isn't very well, so I am in a replacement. My name's Leigh Buttrey. I head of accounts at AS Marketing and also head up the PPC side of the business. Content is very important, as you know, for turning those content pieces into conversions for paid media. And I'm really excited to be joined by a great team of panelists today. So let's get introduced. Any questions can be asked throughout the talk, and we'll answer the questions at the end. And of course, the recording, if you couldn't make it or would like to rewatch this, you'll receive this in a few days' time. So, Janaina, please introduce yourself. Apologies, I probably just butchered your name there. Sorry.
No, it's all good. No worries. Thanks, Leigh. My name is Janaina Barreto-Romero. I'm the Senior Technical SEO Manager at Oncrawl now for the last 3 years, and really happy to have a seat here today to be speaking with everybody. Thank you.
And Vivienne?
Hi, yeah, thanks for giving me the chance to be here. I'm the editorial lead SEO at Build, so I'm responsible for the editorial SEO strategy, teaching a lot and looking at a lot of content every single day and test a lot on see like what's working well, better and not so good on Google.
Perfect. And hi, Vanda.
Hi, everyone. My name is Vanda Pókecz, and I am the SEO team lead at Leigh, currently also having 2 content managers in my team, and I am also a certified digital product manager.
Thank you. Right, then let's get into it. So in your experience then, what key elements should a content strategy include to maximize its impact on conversion rates?
Awesome. Thanks, Leigh. So I'll go ahead and take this one. This is really coming from conversations that I've had with some colleagues and my clients. And the elements that really stand out that should be included are knowing who your audience is. By doing this, then you're able to develop and really map out a customer journey so that you can go and focus on creating the quality content that's going to support them at the right stages. And so when we focus a little bit more on having mapped out a customer journey, this is really allowing marketers and content creators to have a much deeper understanding of who your audience is, what is the need or what is the question that they have so that you can provide them with this answer along with their pain point. And with that, you're going to be able to create that relevant content that's valuable so that they can be served to them at the right time and with the right tone throughout the stage. So when we talk about that and you know what exactly that looks like, if we think about it in terms of the funnel, at the beginning as users, you know, we have this query and we're looking for an answer. So on our side, we're doing the keyword research depending on the topic. It's most likely geared towards some sort of problem solving or a how-to. It's going to look like in the form of a blog, for example. So it's going to be purely informational so that we're able to provide the answer to those questions. Could also look like infographics. When we're coming closer to the middle of the funnel, you know, users are doing their research. They're starting to make some narrowing down of their options. You're starting to develop user guides, maybe even video user guides for those how-tos. And the pages on the site are a lot more informative and maybe encouraging them to download a free ebook or attend a webinar that's coming up. So it's going to be educational so that they're going to be provided with the resources that they need. Like example, like case studies as well. And then towards the end, when we're looking towards the bottom of the funnel, the content around here is going to look a little bit more like comparison pages. So it's something that we're giving the user so that they can justify and solidify the decision that they've made, whether it's choosing your brand, the product, or the solution. So I hope that was able to answer your question.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. Okay, I think this one's heading over to Vanda. How can content creators effectively balance engaging storytelling with a clear focus on driving conversions?
Yeah, personally, I would say that the simple answer is here to start with a very clear briefing. Let me explain a little bit. Being engaging is, of course, very important. And I mean, storytelling is no doubt a strong tool for that. However, before you can be really engaging, you also need to ensure that you're actually working on the right thing and the right way. So you need to ensure that you're actually creating content that has the potential to rank and answers the right questions for the right persona along the right step in their user journey. So a little bit like Janaina touched on as well. And once you basically know what you aim to target, you can use storytelling and any other tools basically to make your content more engaging. But at the end of the day, you just need to make sure that you are providing the real answer, that your content provides value instead of just a lot of fluff, so to say. So here also under sort of answer, I do not necessarily mean that you're answering a question, but you're answering a user problem. And again, just like Janaina pointed out, know your audience. Some people really prefer straight to the point answers, while others do enjoy a good story. It also depends, of course, on the context. For example, personally, it is one of my pet peeves when I am looking at sort of a recipe site and the actual ingredients are at the very bottom of the page. I need to scroll through content that at the moment I don't particularly care about, maybe later. But then again, it's only me. And some people may want to get a better picture first. So I might not be the right persona, but all of this and beyond can actually be covered by having a very clear brief, covering things like tone of voice, keywords, step in the user journey, persona, and so on. So yeah, I hope that answers here.
Yeah, no, it's so interesting. I think going back to basics and actually learning of what that user intent is so important, and based off B2B to B2C is completely different again. And not to say that you can't have storytelling in B2B, but obviously probably tone it down a little bit more depending on what your brand is. Vivienne, I know you had some interesting insights on this as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I totally agree with Vanda on like storytelling is not always the clear focus to drive the conversion. Like if I just want to have a definition and I have a glossar on my page, then it needs to be short. Do not make a landing page that has 5,000 paragraphs and pictures in it. Do not completely storytell anything, but just give me a clear answer. And then when I know your site is the top site to go to for good definitions, maybe I buy your book, for example, if it's an encyclopedia or something. So the category is extremely important on like what type of content we're talking about. Is it a news article? Is it a recipe? Is it an evergreen article? Is it pillar content for my page? I'm explaining my product. What kind of product is it? Is it something like a nail? Then I do not need so much content to describe which kind of nail it is. But if it's something like a business service, then I might need to explain what exactly am I doing? What's my IT service for a business? Because there's like so many kinds of, and is it the right one? And what do I do differently from others? So then storytelling drives the conversion because I really need to explain a lot in the right order. But in other cases, it can be completely like, do not storytell.
Yeah, great questions. Great answer, sorry. Okay, as content creation evolves, how can marketers strike a balance between creating evergreen content and content that addresses current trends, all while optimizing conversion rates all the time?
But I want to bring, to answer this question, I basically want to storytell a little bit here for a second, because I think we need to think about these types of content a little bit differently to kind of help us understand. So we can imagine that our survival is based on the possibility to boil water over fire. We're really bringing ourselves back a few centuries, but that's okay. We can use this, for creating food, hygiene, anything, you get the drill. Now, you have two stoves, all right? Imagine that. One with a very sort of slow burning fire, but this one sort of burns constantly. So this is our evergreen content. This allows you to have sort of a constant supply of hot water, but the water will boil very, very slowly. Hence, it will take you a while to reach your goal, for example, being able to make soup, okay? But the other stove has a very sort of bright burning fire that can sort of heat up water very fast. However, it will only burn for a small period of time. So you do not have a constant supply of hot water here. This is your sort of trend-related content. So as you can see, both of these have sort of advantages and disadvantages. And to put it into a little bit more specific terms, basically your evergreen content has the goal of sort of constant ranking and hence reliable stream of traffic over time. So in a way, constant visibility and sort of relevance for your brand. But on the other hand, content focused on current trends can not only drive a high volume of traffic to your site within sort of a shorter period of time, but it is also likely to drive more conversions, at least when you're looking at it within like a similar time frame, okay? So as an example, after the Barbie movie came out, there was an increasing demand for pink items and sort of the pink Birkenstock, right? Everybody wanted them. So you could see this on e-commerce sites that they really jumped on this trend. And I am pretty certain that most of these actually saw a nice uplift in their conversion rates. However, only for a few months or even less, maybe for a few weeks. But in terms of sort of how to balance these, firstly, I think it is very important to understand that you do not need to use the same content formats for trend-focused content as you use for your evergreen. So instead of sort of long-form editorial content that you may opt for your evergreen content, you may choose sort of a little bit lower effort formats, maybe social media, short-form videos, or at least sort of shorter articles, although of course the quality should still be very high for your sort of trend-related content. And maybe another thing we can consider for this balance is hybrid content. So by that, I mean sort of an evergreen idea that includes sections that can be updated with sort of new stats or new trends. So imagine that you have a fashion-focused e-commerce site. You may create a content, say, do's and don'ts, a guide to a wedding guest attire. And depending on the culture, of course, there are quite some sort of basic but helpful rules you can include here that will stand the course of time, hence sort of this evergreen idea. However, you can also include sort of a brief section here with some tips for clothes, even linking to some product or category pages. And this you will want to update to match the latest trends, because by doing so, you have sort of a higher chance of increasing your conversions. But to kind of wrap up my answer here, nevertheless, we need to plan with both of these content types in mind, because sort of to bring us back to our example, while evergreen may be a slower burn, it definitely burns for longer. And while trend-focused content may burn sort of brighter, but it will die out faster. So I would say that a combination is definitely ideal here.
I would like to add something from a publisher's perspective. I mean, we're focusing mainly on current trends all day long. A lot of publishers do also have a stable pillar of evergreen content, but on a daily basis, it's like 70%, maybe 80% current trends and a little bit of evergreen. So coming from that perspective, there are a lot of publishers out there who are looking into Google Trends and current trends and trying to bag those keywords on a daily basis. So it's definitely, I think it might be harder for some current trends that are very informational, maybe not so commercial, to actually get into rankings, because there's just so much content from established publishers. So it's always makes sense to say, okay, I'm not a publisher, so evergreen content might be like, I should have a more of an evergreen percentage in the content I create than actually going on to the current trends.
Yeah, those are both great answers. I just had a question actually for you both on the back of that. If we're looking at a business who potentially wants to engage with these current trends that are relevant to the business, like how quickly should that content be turned around if we're not going to use it as potentially for SEO impact because of the keywords are probably too difficult, but you're using it for other means of content creation over social media? Like how quickly should people get onto those trends if they are looking for it?
I cannot give you a straight answer for this, but I think what's important here to understand is also the need for anticipation, which is not always possible, of course. But for example, with the example I mentioned regarding Barbie, that was to be anticipated for maybe a half a year or so before it came out, because there was already so much chit-chat about it in the media. So there was realistically time to prepare for that. But this might not always be the case for trends. And I think, Vivienne, you may be able to give a better answer here, given that trend-related content is very relevant for your industry. So,
Absolutely. So I go with the almighty it depends. And it depends on how long the trend is actually working, like starting. Is it a trend where we know, okay, it's a seasonal trend? Like example, we want to get our plants inside because it's getting winter, or want to make sure which plants in winter can live outside. So, it's a short trend. Is it like something when I have an e-commerce shop for interior decoration, and there's a trend coming up that everybody's starting to have this little succulus plants everywhere in their homes. So I need to have an article on like how to do it right and which types are good and which types are bad and stuff like that. And that's a trend that can go on for like weeks and months. If it's a trend like, I don't know, what did we have today? The Kansas City Chiefs, that's happening today. It's done tomorrow. Either you do the content today or you don't do it at all. And then, like especially in when it comes to news, there is a difference if you do it within the hour or in 4 hours. Like you have to do the trend now when it happens.
Great, thank you. Moving on then, so Vanda, you spoke a lot about Barbie but obviously looking at cognitive biases, in the realm of content alchemy, how can they be harnessed to boost conversion rates effectively? I think this is one of an open chat for everyone here.
Maybe I'll go ahead and kick us off on this one.
Yeah, go for it.
Awesome, thanks. This one's actually a really interesting one. I think when we talk about cognitive biases, just when we're trying to understand how complex we are as individuals, when it comes to our problem-solving skills, interpersonal connections that we're making, the decisions that we're making with everything that's happening around us, when you're really able to kind of have a better understanding of those type of complexities, there's a lot of leverage that could happen there. And so we could take, for example, the negativity bias, and this one might be a little bit more obvious for those of us. And so that bias would be that we react a lot more strongly to negative stimuli. And when we talk about that in content, you could take, for example, media articles, something that has a negative headline or a negative title, we tend to react a lot quicker maybe to reading those. And we can see that those type of articles have a higher CTR. So that could be something, let's say, that is leaned in towards more to have a user go in, check out what's actually being published there versus something that has a more neutral or even a positive headline. Something interesting as well, a different bias could be the scarcity bias. And that's when something is considered rare or in short supply, we tend to add a lot more value to them. So as individuals, we'll say, oh, okay, maybe we react a little bit more emotionally and we say, I need this right now because we'll see limited time offer, or we'll say so many days left until I can continue watching this. So we feel the need to kind of go in, register maybe, or download access to that webinar so that we can watch it. And so those are kind of the different ways that it could be played into when it comes to content creation and trying to increase those conversions.
Great, thank you. Vanda, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I can chip in here as well. Very, very good examples given by Janaina. I also think that the availability heuristic is an interesting one because it kind of refers to the tendency to rely on information that is readily available for us, right? Often based on sort of recent examples or easily accessible examples. So we can definitely capitalize on such. And make our content sort of more relatable and memorable for users. But how do we might do this in action? Well, as an example, you can imagine you are writing a content about outfits for female wedding guests, let's say, and you want to then include sort of real trendy examples from recent occasions, for example, red carpets or Instagram trends, or even some inspiration from sort of real life wedding attendees or sort of latest collections from known designers. So, I mean, this might ring a bell already for some of you. You may already be sort of harnessing cognitive biases. And that is definitely the case for many of you, I'm sure, with the bandwagon effect, that might be one of these cognitive biases that some of you have heard about. This refers to the tendency to sort of do or believe things because many other people do or believe the same. We like what other people do, right? So to take advantage of this bias, we can include things like social proof in our content, so testimonials or reviews or any sort of real life experiences from people who are already enjoying the benefits of our product. And this should help us also to improve in terms of our conversions.
I really love the topic of biases because, let's be honest, most content creators do not have any idea what biases are. To be honest, even if you look around journalists, they don't get bias trainings, at least not enough. So most content creators actually do not know what it is and do not use it. So it makes total sense to get into the topic, understand as much as you can on biases, and use it for your content creation as much as you can. I love ideas like what Janaina and Vanda said before, to put it together. Like we have with the confirmation bias, things that we write that people feel like is the right thing, and then you go and actually put it into a negative and have it like go against what they're thinking, and therefore being like the negative headline, and then actually it makes them click because it is, they want their confirmation bias and it goes against what they think. It's a little bit of the backfire effect in that as well, you know, so you click on it because you are absolutely against it. So that's something you can really use for informational content, because, you know, even if you have in a headline the vice versa, that it's actually not, and then explain in the article what it actually is and what's the truth behind it, makes total sense to use for content creation.
All great. They're really insightful. Thank you. Okay, next question. So how do you integrate user feedback and data analytics into your content strategy to continually refine and improve its effectiveness in driving conversions? I guess this is probably just a bit more of a group question. We're all from very different backgrounds here, so I may as well start this. So I think for me, I'm very analytical. I deal with paid media all the time, so you can very quickly see if something's converting or not. You have that instant gratification. You can clearly see when something's working. Based off that, we use other platforms. So we'll look at the user experience of the journey. Are people reading the content, and are they getting the right sort of information correctly? You know, does it match their user intent for what they've searched for? And going back to what Janaina said before, is that top funnel, middle funnel, and bottom funnel, is the user intent correct for the page they're landing on? And you can quickly see that with paid media. So I'm very fortunate. I know when it comes to SEO, it's a bit of a longer game there. So open up the question to maybe Vanda or Janaina, if you want to answer that.
Sure, I can start. I actually want to point out that unless we are, of course, I mean, okay, Leah, you mentioned paid media. That's, of course, a little bit more straightforward, but with more organic content. Unless we are, of course, user testing at a sort of previous stage, we can mostly only collect feedback and data once we sort of made that content available for people, for our users. So I think for this reason, it's very important that we have a very clear alignment early on sort of when is a content good enough to be rolled out, right? It doesn't necessarily need to be perfect, because sometimes it is actually worth, in order to collect feedback, to kind of quickly push out imperfect outputs, rather than sort of wasting time on perfecting something without actual feedback. So how do we even know that it's perfect, right? So basically, I think the quicker you collect feedback, the quicker you can also improve and drive your conversions.
Yeah, for sure. Totally in agreement. It's interesting, that kind of A/B testing as well, because with paid media, you can do that very easily. So it's very interesting to know. And I think maybe if you're aligned on what your conversions are, whether it's a downloadable content piece or even if it's just a page view or time on the website, that aligning what your conversion goal is will help you then understand how that content's working.
Yeah, just to add on my side, both of you make perfect points. It was actually something that I was going to mention already. And I think it's a great point to say it's a matter of going in there and digging to find out, like, as you said, Leigh, maybe where is the drop-off point for those pieces of content when you're using the tools to see where are users spending the most time on. And what I see with clients on my side, depending on the integrations that they have, if it's something like logs, and we're looking at the amount of traffic that's going to certain pieces of content, monitoring, for example, maybe freshness, how often are users going, and why is one piece of content maybe more successful, and maybe, just to say quite frankly, maybe why some pieces failed. And so going in, being able to identify, and as you said, maybe the user intent, the search intent isn't matching them at that stage in the journey.
Maybe if I can just jump in with one more thought, I think it doesn't really matter what data or feedback we are collecting. It means nothing if we are actually not acting on it. So I think for this reason, it is very important that we are looking at our strategy with a sort of flexible mindset, and we are willing to sort of revisit it and adjust it. If we are missing that willingness, then we can collect whatever through testing, through interviews, through surveys, it will mean nothing. So be flexible.
That's a great point, Vanda. One of the things I like to do as well is I think you can get so tunnel visioned into your strategy and what's working or what you think's working. And maybe sometimes there's a bit of personal sort of effect when you get negative feedback or it's not working the way you thought it would. One of the things I like to do at AS Marketing is we'll have another team member like go through the whole sales funnel as I've put it through, just to see exactly how their point of view is of how they're going to use it. I think that's a great thing as well, is just get another set of eyes on what you're doing, just to have that bit of soundboarding as well. Okay, great. Moving on then. So as experts in the field, what challenges have you faced in aligning content strategies with conversion goals, and how did you overcome them? This one is over to Janaina.
Yeah, thank you, Leigh. So this one it's not necessarily myself speaking from a personal experience. It's something from a conversation that I had with a colleague, and it's probably not a totally unique experience. So those of us who are listening probably is something that resonates to you, or maybe something that you even experienced yourself. But that's when there is a total disconnect, let's say, between the business objectives and the content strategies. So let's say there's a scenario where, the editorial team is totally focused on producing that really high quality editorial content. And just generally speaking, the SEO team is focused on optimizing pages for ranking, for traffic, but the content pieces haven't been mapped out to what the actual business goals are. And when that happens, this means essentially the content is not going to be directly supporting what those business objectives are at the time. And, those objectives could be something like increasing sales, generating leads. It could be increasing product adoption. When the content is not directly supporting those business goals, that we have a serious misalignment. And so when we come across that type of scenario, a solution could be maybe using a different framework to increase the collaboration between the teams. That could be something like OKRs. I think something everyone is a little bit familiar with, having SMART goals so that the collaboration is clear in terms of the type of content that's going to be produced, so that we're increasing, let's say, increasing leads or increasing the adoption. It could also be a combination of combining the two teams. That's actually something that I've heard more than once with some of the clients that I've spoken with, to be able to have everyone in full visibility of what are those business goals and how can we ensure that the content that we are generating is going to be optimized, but also directly supporting what those objectives are.
Great, thank you so much. Okay, just moving on. And then what role does visual content play in the conversion process, and how can businesses optimize it for better results here? I think, Vivienne, this is a really interesting insight that you had into this question.
Yeah, because I think when we talk about visual content, we have to not only think about like which videos and which pictures do we add to the content, but also like how do we structure the content? Where is the table? Where is the list? Because also that's a very important point in looking at a search intent. So from a user's perspective, if I put in a keyword like best headphones, maybe my intent is that I do want a list. So I have to have a list somewhere in the article and visualize the content the right way. If I just write it down in a plain text, maybe add some videos, maybe add some pictures, but the actual intent I do not have visualized the way I would expect it when I enter the keyword, I completely lose the person. Like I sometimes enter keywords and then I click on something on Google and I scroll through the text to find if there is a list in it, because I expect from this keyword to be a list in the article. And if there isn't, I just don't read it at all. I even start reading it. Yeah, so that's one point to it. I don't know, would you like to add?
Yeah, that's great. Because I think it's a very different perspective of like you're visualizing what the actual layout of the page is. It's obviously hugely important for user experience, and also, like I said, with that search intent, what are people expecting? One of the things I like to do when doing like research and things for content is actually just seeing what Google's already picking up in terms of FAQs for sections and things like that. Is the SERPs already telling us that Google is ranking the frequently asked questions part? If so, yes, then we need to be adding that into our content as well. So actually just seeing what's relevant. It could be that videos appear when you search in a specific keyword, then we need to know we know that we need to have a video and maybe in our content there. So no, really interesting. Any other feedback at all?
Maybe I can, first of all, I totally agree with Vivienne. I think another role, though, a specific role we can say about sort of visual content is kind of going back to our previous question, right, about storytelling. It's like visuals are very, very powerful tools for storytelling. And they are also very powerful, or can be very powerful for sort of evoking trust as well, especially we are being very sort of consistent with our visuals, kind of pulling in, our brand, so to say. So I think for this kind of evoking emotions as well as trust, visuals are can be very useful.
It also can be like the unique selling proposition. Like if you have a great infographic on something, that could be like the best one on the market. That could be the reason why people visit your page, and you can drive traffic immensely because you have something that's like really compelling put down into one infographic. I think that happens quite often. Like if you have this one content piece that has the best visualization explanation for everything, everybody's just sharing you and it goes viral.
Thank you. Those are really great questions. Answers, sorry. I think this one, we're coming to the end of our questions, but this one's probably a hot topic at the moment. So AI has been the top emerging trend in content creation recently. How do you suggest content creation adapt to incorporate it or avoid it? It's been a hot topic, AS marketing. We find that AI at the moment is great for sometimes content ideation. It's great in terms of paid media if you're just needing quick updates to headlines and things like that. It can be useful. But when we look at content creation, I mean, AS marketing does localization. That's what we do, SEO localization. We can't use AI for that, unfortunately. Like we have to get real people to write the content. AI at the moment is very geared up for the US, for instance, and US language. So it's not something that we at the moment are incorporating, but that's just my side of it. So I'd love to hear on everyone else's. Who would like to go next?
I completely go in the direction of if you don't do it, you miss out. Everyone else is doing it. They will all have an advantage pretty quickly. If you do not start using AI for your content creation in whatever way makes sense to you, find out which it is, find out what makes sense, but utilize it. Otherwise, you will lose, definitely.
I totally agree. I think avoid it is not an option. We are beyond that at this stage. Whether it's unfortunately or not, everybody can decide for themselves. But I think a large focus, at least, in discussions, have been placed on sort of spitting out content fast with the help of AI. And that may actually work for some type of content. I'm not going to say it won't. We should, of course, question it. And personally, I do think, though, that at the moment, the best way to incorporate AI into content creation is, one, for research purposes and maybe for some creating sort of a frame or script with which we can work with. And second, for testing purposes, in particular with the focus on CRO. For example, I mean, imagine that you want to split test, right? Different variations of a title or CTA. You can get a bunch of different variations of these to test within seconds, or maybe let's say minutes. So I do definitely see value for these steps, and I think it will just get better and better. So we'll need to keep up.
Yeah, I mean, just to add from my side, I completely agree with both of you, and probably everyone out there is saying the same thing. And as Vivienne, as you said, I think a good point is find out how it works best for you. And I think a good way, and something that I've seen is, use it maybe to improve the efficiency of your workflows. Something that I saw with a colleague was their content brief creations. So you still have the human aspect of your expertise to do your keyword research, and then you have your script to go on and run to do, let's say, the secondary keyword, the creation of the headlines, the entire brief, and then you're still going in to make sure, okay, this makes sense. This is the tone, the search intent is matching what I expected, and so it's a great way to reduce, let's say, the amount of work that maybe we used to do or you used to do when you were doing your content briefs, but you're still ensuring the quality is there.
And then I think the next step is not to think about how I use it for content creation, but for content interaction. So maybe I created my content from a human, had a human create my content because it made more sense and it just has the best quality that way. But then if my user wants to interact with my content, I can attach an AI to my site, like we did with Hey Build, for example, and are researching into other ways of how we can make people actually interact with the content on Build.de. So I think that's the next important purpose of AI when it comes to content. Let them ask questions to the article, let them discuss on the topic furthermore with fictional characters done by AI.
Yeah, so many great things. I definitely think we can't avoid AI, unfortunately, as much as I think people are probably saying it's a bad thing. I do wonder how the amount of content that is being produced, how that will have an effect in terms of SEO and content creation, and whether or not that will change in sort of years to come here. But yeah, great answers, everyone. I think that is the end of our questions from our side. Oh, no, we have one more, sorry. I think we've kind of covered this though, but I think we have actually covered this, but anyone else got anything additional to add for pros and cons?
Yes. My favorite con is, of course, the hallucination. We haven't talked on the topic right now, but it is so important to check every article that a machine writes, because it can really get the sentence wrong and the meaning of it, and just change two words from a position in the sentence, and suddenly it becomes something completely different, and can really hurt your brand. So con of an AI is the hallucinations, and make sure you check and double check.
Yeah, no, so true. I think AI, I think there's a misconception that AI just pulls an information already out there and re-gives it back. It doesn't generate new things. So depending on the type of business, if your business is very techy, make sure you check everything there, because AI is not going to know it. But again, it can help you in terms of creating a content brief or things like that. Sorry, Vanda, I know you wanted to just say something then.
No, I just really liked, obviously, what Vivienne pointed out, but I like to, and I think this is kind of also the direction you were going, and I like to think of it as not only hallucinations, but the problem of misinterpretation. In particular, if you are using AI or trying to use AI, for example, for translations, or maybe even attempting to localize, because I think many of us tested out how that works. And I definitely did, and came across quite some misinterpretations, which in some content may not mean much. Maybe it's not harmful at all, but in other type of contents, it can be very harmful. So we need to be careful for sure.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for answering all our questions. Okay, I think we've got a few questions in here, but please do feel free to have your questions in the questions tab at the bottom right if you do have anything. But yeah, we'll just get on to it now. This might be a question for Vivienne, though, from Might. I think we can do this. So, do we have an idea of the percent of contents performing on Discover that can be considered as evergreen content? Does anyone know this?
Yes, of course. So the percentage on, like, I don't scroll through all of Discover every single day, but from what I see, from what I see from our content that gets indexed in Discover, there's like an evergreen article has the same chance to rank in Discover than a non-evergreen article. If it's like news from, just today, like something new on the war in Ukraine, it rather does not happen so often in Discover. So it's really more like the entertainment pieces. So evergreen content has just as much chance to rank in Discover as anything else.
Great, thank you. Okay, next question. Is it worth creating an informational content that doesn't have any search demand in cases where the product or service is very niche or very innovative? Anyone got any information around that? Should we create content revolving a product or service that has no search demand?
I think in general, we need to be a little bit wary of, or like, we shouldn't always fully rely on search demand data, right? Of course, saying that as an SEO who relies on that a lot. However, there is often talk about also like zero search volume keywords, etc., right? In particular, if you are in some very, very niche business, I think it could still be valuable, of course. But maybe the rest of the people in the round have other opinions.
No, same. Like, again, from a publisher's perspective, if it's news, it's news. It doesn't matter if people are looking for it. You still have to do it because it's important. Plus, we do have a lot of direct traffic, so we make the trends. So it, it goes on our front page, and then people start Googling it.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Okay, next question. Would it be possible to share a specific case study or use case where well-crafted content directly contributed to a significant increase in conversion rates? Does anyone want to take the question?
I don't have a specific one in mind, but I would be happy to kind of look into see what I have looked at in the past to see if it could be shared afterwards.
Yeah, that would be great. I'm sure we could probably arrange for that. And likewise, I haven't got a specific one in mind at the moment.
I also don't have anything specific in mind. However, maybe just an interesting kind of side road here is that I think when we're talking about content, we're often thinking about, right, informational content and so on. But depending on kind of what industry you're in, if, for example, you're in e-commerce, then a large part of your content, maybe the biggest part of your content, is things like the titles of products, product descriptions and so on. And I cannot give you anything very specific, but we have done some experimentation on some tweaks to product titles on sort of category pages, which have led to significant conversion rates. And again, the important part here is we tested this so we could confidently say that there is a significant uplift in this case in conversion rate before actually making that change.
We actually last month had an article about where you could compare how much do I make, like, is it a lot compared to my region where I live in? And we started it with, it was behind the paywall, and we started it with the headline, like, this is the group of workers or the region in Germany that makes the most money. And it didn't convert. And then we changed the headline to, you are already rich if you make 3,000 a month. And then it started converting because people wanted to know more about it. Like, just the headline change, just the change of the SEO title suddenly drove immense conversions. Make it as near as possible to what the pain is in yourself.
I may have seen that article.
No, that's great. That goes back to the cognitive bias that Janaina was talking about before, like that kind of people feel like they're missing out or effect, or want to see where they come up in the category. No, really like that. Okay. What strategies can you employ to conduct audience research and gather insights that inform your content creation process?
I think that's kind of tied to some of the questions that we answered earlier in terms of using, the data analytics tools out there. I mean, that was a little bit more focused on seeing how those pieces of content potentially are performing. In this case, it could also be used, let's say there's a case where some pieces of content are not actually matching the search intent at that time. It would be a matter of, going back, doing a little bit more research to see, are we targeting the right audience in this case? So making sure that it's actually reaching the actual readers or users that we need. So sometimes we have to take a step back to see maybe where we missed the mark.
It's a tool question. I love tool questions. So look into your GSC data if you haven't already. I mean, I think we all do that. If we don't do that, do more of it. Or if you're doing it and you don't get any audience insights and research, then read some more articles online. There's plenty out there and plenty of ideas on how to get more from it. Also, do not forget EEAT. Like, I love the list from Alida Solis on like this 15 EEAT questions to check your article against. Is it answering all of them? If you have a great piece of content which you think is great, but your audience isn't having it, check for those. Is it really bringing anything else to the table that one does not already know?
And I think that once you obviously have your basic audience idea down on paper, you can dig a little bit deeper, and you can work together with other teams like UX or product or similar to actually carry out sort of user interviews, etc. So there you can really dig a little bit deeper on what the needs, the problems, etc. might be of your users.
Yeah, I think as well, like there's so many clients we have who sort of come to us and they think they know who their buyer persona is, and then when you dig in deeper actually to who's currently buying them, who's engaging with them, they find that that's actually kind of misaligned. And there comes that ye old thing where sales and marketing are misaligned a little bit here. We had a client of ours that came in who sell really huge laser machines, which, as you could probably imagine, was geared up for B2B men. And then through COVID, it quickly realized that actually their audience flipped itself on the head. It went through these mompreneurs, these women at home who wanted to, start an Etsy business that took off during COVID. So we had to really just switch up the whole brand messaging and move forward in content and looking at that and how that actually translates now from the website right through to even the content they're posting on social media. Everything literally flipped its head.
And also a great way where AI comes in. Like I recently found a company that tries to match your audience with similar audiences. So that's, for example, how, what's the company for leggings, Lululemon or something? They found out that not only are hipster moms buying their leggings, but also a lot of hip hoppers. So they had a brand strategy campaign just targeted to hip hoppers who are already buying it, and therefore increased sales and found different target audiences. And that was an AI example. So the AI went through social and the internet and tried to find out like who else is liking your content, who else are your target audiences.
That's so interesting. Like just going back to data and just figuring out who your audience is. I think that's the basis of like content creation in itself. Looking at that, so great. And I think we've got one more question. So how do you identify growing topics? Do you start writing in real time? Who would like to go for this one?
I mean, yes, obviously in publishing, but everyone else.
I'm actually thinking of what Vanda mentioned earlier about, there are some topics that you have some anticipation about. So the Barbie topic, so there was a lot of discussion and publications on this. So I guess in a way it's something you could piggyback to say. So, this is something that's coming up. There was about a year. You could focus some of your content, obviously not on the Barbie topic, but whatever it is that we're speaking of. I think there are some ways to identify, what's coming up next. And trying to be able to maybe predict in a way what could be something tied to that.
Yeah, I think that if you have the resources, right? If, for example, you have a social team or people focusing on social media, etc., then you should definitely harness that. You should work together with them, etc., because social listening can be a very powerful tool, I think, to quickly catch trends, etc. I personally don't have much experience with it, but I definitely see the benefit if you, again, have the resources for that, of course.
Yes, for identifying social topics, I love CrowdJangle. I don't know which tools you're using. And for SEO trends, it's definitely Google Trends in addition with Glimpse.
Great, thank you so much. I think we're at the end of our questions, unless anyone else wants to ask anything. No? Okay, great. So thank you all for joining. This has been the end of this Content Alchemy, turning words into conversions. You'll all receive the live recording a few days later via email. So thank you for taking the time, and thank you for the great panelists. Lots of insightful things. Even I learned a lot.
Really nice
Thanks for having us.